Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3, testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. We are on the air. This is Thesis.
3, 2, 1, we are on the air. This is Thesis. Everything is everything. I am your host, Jay Marie. How's it going out there, folks? Hope you're doing well. Thank you for showing up and hanging out with us today. Coming to you live from Zombieland. Yes, sir. Well, I want to thank you guys for showing up today and checking in on us. I hope you find yourself well and healthy and safe. That's that. Before we get started, I actually want to get some housekeeping out of the way. For all of our listeners out there, if you have not yet subscribed to our channel on YouTube, you're missing out on a lot of stuff. We have clips of the shows and motivational clips, and I also got the Thesis Films uh, stuff that I do. So there's other, cultural films and stuff that I do that's outside of the podcast. So it would be really great, and if you went over there and hit the subscribe button. We're actually planning on a huge interview. I'm not gonna say nothing who it is yet until I actually secure it. But that should be pretty soon. It's gonna be pretty awesome. So we don't want you to miss anything. So you're on the audio side only, that's great, but we do have a lot of stuff on the video side. So it would be great if you go over there, and that'll help our numbers too. So please go over there and hit subscribe. Also, if you are new to our show and you have not yet hit the subscribe button on Spotify, please do. And if you like what you heard, please give us a review. That helps a lot. Really does. All right, let's go ahead and jump right into it. So I've been doing a lot of research on this next topic that we're going to talk about. I kind of went overboard a little bit because it's very focused in into a particular time frame of history, not too far back. So we're not going to be going too far back, but something very recent, and I dove in really deep for the past week and a half. Yesterday all day, the day before, yesterday even the day before in the evening, I went in for a few hours. I wanted to make sure that I knew this story in and out. I took notes. I got 3 pages of notes, and usually when I take notes, it doesn't work out. Well, I mean, I hardly ever look down at them, but I might have to a few times because there's certain things that I want to make sure. And I wrote a bunch of stuff down, but I dug in so deep that I know this story very good now, to where I might not even have to look down at the notes too often. So that's gonna be good. Este, so elections can kind of get, throughout history. There's been coup d'état. A coup d'état it's French, but it translates to blow to the state. Usually, it's a faction of the military or something like that takes over, the power from a sitting president or a sitting, government. As them, and it usually involves like military force. The army takes over and they suspend, the courts and the senate and whatever. You know, that's usually how coup goes. That's usually how a coup goes. It's a military coup. You know, as the history is flushed with examples of military coups that were violent. Some were violent. Some were short lived. As the, there's many examples. One of the things that as I was digging in to these examples, one thing that stands out is that there's usually some sort of political turmoil prior, during the when these events happen, right? The coup d'état happens because there's reforms going on, or whatever, right? So, like for instance, este, in 1989, uh, in the Philippines, there was a military coup, as because there was reforms going on in the government, as they wanted to give the citizens true constitutional rights, which they didn't have up to that time, right? So prior to that moment in history, the powers that be, the presidents and all them, um, they were tyrannical. You know what I'm saying? They used their force and their power against the citizenry. They kill people, and there was no, you know, no where you can go to, for, when a government is so corrupt, you have authoritarian power over the people, right? So the people, and see, here's the thing, is they had elections, right? So when there's corruption in the people and in the political parties and stuff, and they have elections, sometimes these guys win. But there's moments in history, like for instance in the Philippines in 1989, they were promising reforms to the government, and the people said, yes, we want constitutional rights. We want the ability to petition our courts and stuff like that, right? Petition our representatives and stuff like that. So, so um, the 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 popular political candidate, Ferdinand, I'm sorry, Corazon Aquino, is that she was the wife of the president of the guy who was running, that everybody loved. She's like, oh, this is gonna be the guy that's gonna free us. He's the one that's talking about liberty and this and that, and boom, you know, because power doesn't, it doesn't get surrendered that easily. So his wife took his place, Corazon Aquino, and she won. And in 1989, as the or actually in her 6 years of a term as president, there was coup attempts, 9 attempts to take over. You know, there were small attempts. It would start off in like some base over here, and then another attempt at some building, government building over there. But in 1989, it was a bigger attempt. They hit and at the airport base, and then they hit, whoever this coup attempt was. It was a military coup. But they started taking over strategic play parts of the country, as the surrounding the capital city, and what they wanted to do was take the capital, building, or wherever the president was, right? These political factions in history, throughout history, they don't give up power so easily, as they tried and they failed, because the military defenses of the president, some of them didn't turn. They were being offered to turn to the bad, to the people who were doing the coup, and they didn't. So they fought them off and repelled them and actually saved the day. So they was a failed coup attempt, but there was many lives lost as the uh, by that attempt. We have it in the Soviet Union. While the Soviet Union was beginning to collapse, towards the end of the Soviet Union, the old political party leaders, the old political party members, didn't like what was going on, because the president at the time, Gorbachev, was promising. I'm sorry, it's because they had two presidents. It was kind of weird. They had Boris Yeltsin, which was the president of Russia, and then and Gorbachev, which was the president of the Soviet Union, right? So, but they were starting to promise transparency and reform in the government, because the states, they had took over the federal, the federal power in Russia, and not just Russia, but in the Soviet Union, had so much power over the people. So during that time in the 1990, 1991, so they started promising what they called glasnost, transparency in the government, reforms, perestroika, reforms in the government, But the old party, the old guard, the old political revolutionaries, they didn't want to give up that power so quickly. So in 1991, they they attempted a coup. They as Gorbachev was at his vacation home, and they basically sent some tough guys over there to surround the place and say, "You're not leaving anywhere." And suddenly a commission came on the air and said, "Oh, the president is sick, but he's fine. Don't worry. So we're gonna have a new commission, and we're in charge now, just like that." You know. And but the president of Russia, which was Boris Yeltsin, he was, they were together, they were working together with Gorbachev and all these reforms and all that stuff, and he was a very powerful president, a governor basically of a state, as that. and he was being loud, and he was telling the people, no, go out into the streets and fight, and this is not proper. The way this is not going, this is not what's supposed to be happening. There's things that we have going in motion, and these people are trying to stake back. So again, calling on the people to stand up, and calling on the people to resist. you know there's actually a lot of videos out there and footage, of when they took over the TV station. And there's video footage of the Philippine coup. There's video footage of the coup in the Soviet Union in 1991. Este, in 2016, not too long ago, in Turkey, they had a military coup, or supposed military coup. That one's a little tricky, but same thing. Este, a faction of the Turkish military attempted to overthrow the government. While the president was away on vacation, right? I'm going out of town. Something goes down, and it was a one day event, but a faction, they took over a base, and they took over several key government buildings, and they started shooting at whoever tried to defend, any police or army that tried to defend, but same thing happened. They went live on the air. One of the reporters had the president on the phone, and he told the people, go out into the streets. This is not the way it's supposed to be. Go out into the streets. We have a rule of law, and this is not how people, power, and the people went out into the streets by the thousands, and by the hundreds of thousands, and then by the millions, and repelled, maybe not the millions because it wasn't that huge of a faction, but hundreds of thousands of people went out into the streets, and a lot of them died. They didn't have guns to fight these people, but there's video footage of the coup attempt in Turkey, 2016, where they took over this main bridge that was leading into the capital city, and on that bridge, a lot of the people came and confronted the soldiers. A lot of people got killed on that bridge. That's them. But the people came out, and the president had told them, something, this is not, hey, they're trying to take over power. Let's defend our country, right? So so the people came out, and they eventually, some by throwing rocks or whatever, and then some by just talking to the soldiers that were there in part of the coup or whatever, like, no, you're killing your own brother, eh, disarm yourself. And sure enough, they disarmed themselves, and they all gave up, and they all got arrested. And that's that's a unique story in and of itself. That can have a whole show in and of itself because of what happened afterwards. I said, but so you see, there's examples of coups, and they've been violent. And there's plenty of other examples, but they've been violent. That's the But in a modern age, like for instance Turkey, 2016, that's not long ago. That's 1989. The Philippines, 91. So that's not long ago. That's 30 years ago. We have technology, we have uh, news and international broadcasts and stuff like that, right? It'll be kind of hard for people to pull something off like that now. In the times that we live in right now, there's a lot of time we hear a lot about some the stuff that happened here in America with recent as the elections and political events and stuff like that, right? And they try to use this word like the coup, a sudden violent uprising, and they take power or attempted to take power where people died and everything, right? But how would a non-violent coup, you know, would it even be possible? How would a non-violent coup look like, right? Because we are in the age of technology, in the age of cameras and news, 24-hour news, and everybody got phones and stuff, right? But the modern age, it's kind of hard to pull stuff off, like tricking the masses. Maybe long ago, 80s, before cable, 70s, when you only had three major TV news. Maybe it was easier to pull stuff off. Maybe it was easier to pull the wool over the people's eyes, right? Because you only have certain amount of mediums where the message gets out, right? But in a modern time, there's so many mediums for information that it's kind of hard to pull something like that off, especially like a nonviolent, blow to the state, because a coup d'état translates to blow to the state, right? Because if a government gets knocked over, knocked off, whatever, taken over, that's a blow. That's a blow to the state of things, right? And so we have elections, democratic societies. We're not like the Soviets where the army is part of, where we're not like the Philip back in the day in the Philippines where the army would be used. We use our armies and stuff like that for peaceful stuff. Western nations normally mostly use their armies just for defense and for war and stuff like that. Yeah, but not against its own citizenry or nothing like that, right? So how would somebody pull something off like that if they wanted to in the modern age? Well, let's talk about an interesting story um, of of our friends in Mexico down to the south, of their 1988 presidential election, which is it's highly controversial historically. Has Since the moment it happened, it has been highly controversial. Um, it's quite an amazing story. In Mexico, they have several political parties, kind of like a parliamentary system. They have a Senate and a House, but they have so many political parties that they have to find consensus and to passing laws or for passing. Stuff. Uh, the political structure in Mexico is very different than, let's say, what's in America, right? But the PRI, which is the most powerful political party in Mexico, they've been in power since the 30s. After after the revolution, and they kind of settled everything down. They started making political parties, and they created the political parties since way back then, and they've held power in the government for so long, that that not just like they've held the presidency for 60 years. They've never lost a presidency prior to 1988. No, I'm sorry. Um, Up to this time, they hadn't lost a presidency in about 60 years. The political party, the PRI, was involved in every aspect of the government. Every department. Kind of like the administrative state. You know, they even passed laws that funded the party. So the party would receive in recent times, the party would receive about $1 billion a year, like for the political party, but from the federal government. They made a law funding themselves, and they would use that money for political elections and whatever, right? So it's basically the taxpayers were funding the PRI, the political party, PRI. Este, so they hold power for so long, up to 1988. They've just, you know, so much power, and with power comes, money and corruption. And without going too much into the history of Mexico itself, there's only several powerful families. The last I saw in one of the reports was around 10,000 families control the 90 million or so, over 100 million people in Mexico. Not control, but the straight up like oligarch types. Rich landowners, whatever, right? So here comes the election of 1988, and the PRI, they call it the PRI. They've been promising reforms too, because up to this point the government has been investing more money in industries, and so the government, the federal government in Mexico owned the oil industry. They owned the airports, TV stations. There were up to coming up to around this point in time, they had started being more involved into the ownership of these industries, little by little, to where they had huge percentages and ownerships of these industries. So there was a lot of promises coming around this time of reforms in the government, in the PRI. They don't have primaries the way we do, where oh, who's gonna be our running, who's gonna run for our party? Is it gonna be Ted Cruz? Is it gonna be Marco Rubio? Is it gonna be Donald Trump? Right? We have primaries, and we get to vote to decide who's gonna represent our party in the election. Well, in Mexico, the president picks who's gonna succeed him, right? The people have no choice in who are they gonna vote for. And that system was set up by the PRI, by the PRI, for many years to basically take the power out of the hands of the people and put it in the hands of several, you know. So coming up to this point, they had already started promising reforms in the government, and the people wanted true democracy. They wanted to vote for their representatives. People were angry that they had no choice in who was going to be running for president, and they were starting to demand that. And so you know how politics, they're okay, they a politician will say what he thinks the people want to hear. He'll agree and repeat and say, oh, no, we're gonna do this, okay, we're gonna do this. So the politicians started hearing that the people want reform, and of course, okay, we're gonna do that. Basically, in society, wanted change, right? Society wanted change, um, and this political party, which everybody calls corrupt. You ask anybody about the PRI, they're like, oh, they're all corrupt. All they do is steal money. Like every president, up to, I mean, De La Madrid, him, but prior presidents up to him, they all seem to have left office several $billion richer. And this is not hyperbole. This is fact, documented facts. You could look them up. Este, so there was a lot of corruption in the presidency of Mexico, in the political party, the PRI, that has never lost a presidential election in 60 years. So the people want to change. And they found their, not their savior, but they found a candidate in one of the other parties, Cuauhtemoc Cárdenas. He was running under the PA, the PAN. I'm sorry, I didn't write down his political party. Este, the United Democratic Front or something like that. But the people liked, because he was saying, no, we're about to change, and there was like a populist swell, because he was saying, we're gonna go in there, and these guys have been in power for so long. We're gonna change. We're gonna give the power back to you guys, so you can be involved in elections and stuff like that. Truly be involved in elections. So there was a swell coming of citizens that were ready to vote for somebody else, right? So along comes the night of the election in 1988, as the PRI had always had a tradition. Well, they build the tradition of declaring victory by a certain time, by 10 o'clock or by 8 o'clock or whatever. Oh, our numbers have come in, they're overwhelmingly in favor for the PRI. We declare victory. That was a tradition almost. Like they held that, like, this is what we do. So at that time in history, they have computers and stuff like that. So they have a system like we do today, to where as the results are coming in from different areas, they're being tabulated coming in, and there's a machine that's tabulating everything together to let us know, to report out to the people, hey, these are the results that are coming in. Nowadays we have them on the screen as they're going up and down. You can go directly to the office of the attorney general of your state and look at the results coming in or whatever. So they had a system where they had computers and all the tabulators coming in, and they would report out to the media. And so usually your first reports start coming in. You hear exit polls throughout the day, as you do here throughout the day, because there's no actual numbers coming in until the polls close and the counts start coming in, right? But throughout the day, oh, we're doing good because they got these exit polls that they're asking people as you leave the poll, hey, who did you vote for? Blah blah blah. So throughout the day, the media was reporting, oh, we're doing good. People are excited about the PRI, and there's a lot of excitement about the PRI and this and that. But the political party in charge of all the counting and all the machines and everything, they see this numbers coming in, and early numbers are starting to show that the numbers for Cardenas are way more than they are for the PRI, which is Salinas. De Gortari was the one that was chosen for the PRI, and they started panicking as that they so normally around by 6 o'clock and stuff you start, after you have you know the I'm not particularly sure about as soon as the polls close, whatever, but they're supposed to be by a certain time, early numbers coming in, and the party, the PRI, usually had that down to where they would come out and say, oh yeah, the early numbers are looking good and looking that and this and that, but they're supposed to show actual numbers and say, like, look here, it's 7 o'clock, look, our numbers are blah blah blah, this is what we got, but it wasn't looking that way. So so mind you, everything I'm telling you is historically documented fact, okay. They started looking into how they didn't want, we're losing, what are we going to do? There was panic, and the attorney general's office, I'm sorry, the not the attorney general's office, the interior, the department of interior, that was the office that counted the votes. Este. And he came and they told the party that we're losing, we're about to lose. So that some of the heads, the top minds at the party, and they said, just tell them that the system crashed. Tell them that the machine broke. The machine that was counting it broke. It stopped counting, and we don't know what happened. Just tell them that. So they came out and told the media the machine that was counting the tabulator broke. We don't know the numbers. We don't know what's going on. It's calm down. We'll figure it out. The guy's name was Secretary de la Massieu. He was the guy. I got it here in front of me. I'll dig it out here in a second. He was the guy that came out and told everyone that the system had crashed. You know, and so the media is going crazy. The other political parties are going like, "What the hell's going on?" So they actually came to the attorney general's building, to make petitions, like, to try to figure out what's going on. And so 6 hours passed. Uh, 6 hours passed before the system came up, but they said the system. 6 hours later, they said the system came up and they declared victory for the PRI. Salinas. They declared Salinas as the victor in the presidency, and he was not heard from or seen for the rest of the night. He was not heard from and seen all night. Usually you win, you come out, you talk, and hey, interviews or whatever. He was not seen for a whole day. Just keep your head down. That's the protests started right away, and I don't mean protests like in the streets. That came later. But the protests from the senators and the protests from the opposition parties and those who were running, and everybody was trying to figure out what happened, and the official story was that the machine crashed, and but when it came up, trust us, we got the right numbers. And that was the official story. That's what the media reported. Some media might question a little bit, but they didn't push too much. Apparently, because but there's plenty of reports of, they just report what happened, and what they say, without any pushback. But you know why? Because I actually looked this up too. The PRI had gained so much power, right? And so remember the involvement of the government in industry. Well, they own the TV stations, they own the airwaves. So these TV stations are not going to exist if they go against the narrative. So whatever the narrative was that the government put out, these TV stations repeated it. That's them. There was um, one of the gentlemen for Cuauhtemoc Cardenas, his his aide, his senior aide to the campaign was killed. He was the one that was raising the most fuss. You know, he was killed the day after the election in his car with an assistant. And of course, they declared victory, and the proceedings continued, the parades and the inauguration and everything like nothing happened. And they promised investigations into what happened that day. They promised investigations into Francisco Obando, the aide of Cardenas, the senior aide of the political. The president was running, his senior aide running the campaign was murdered. They said we're gonna look into that, but they proceeded on like nothing, you know, like nothing ever happened. Now, kind of like when as I was studying all this stuff, I kind of got this image of like, like when you give somebody something, when you don't, not like that, but when somebody gives you something, when you don't earn it, if you didn't work for it, if you didn't build it, if you didn't, you know the value of it, it seems to be like, you don't value it as much because none of your sweat came off. It didn't come out of your pocket. So sometimes we can not value something that we didn't earn. So in my mind I was thinking like, what happens after something like this? you know they didn't earn they didn't earn this victory. They claimed it, they took it. What happens after that? Yes, there's people protesting and making, um, you know, filing petitions and lawsuits and all this to try to get to the bottom of what happened that day on that election day. You know, well, after when we look at that, and then we kind of go a few years ahead because this is a 6 year president term. So when we look at what happened in those 6 years, from that moment in 88 to 94, to the end of 94, the beginning of 95, the country went to doo doo. The country went to shit. The money got devalued. Uh, their stock market crashed. A lot of things happened. The NAFTA was agreed to. Like all these things happen. Good things happen, but bad things happen too. It almost seems like the the people in power tried to grab all the money, all the business, anything that they could, because they kind of knew that the jig was up. They knew that the gig was up. They saw the numbers. They saw the numbers, and they saw the actual numbers, and they didn't tell the people, but they know that the people want change in the nation. They saw it, so they know the jig is up. So what do? Criminals like to cash out. So during that time, there was what they called privatization, because up to that time, remember, they were buying industry, they were investing in a lot of industry. So privatization started happening around that time, and they started selling a lot of the industries to their friends and to their political donors, and so basically some of their political donors that were already rich, some of the richest people in the nation, became instantly more richer, because now like one guy controlled 90% of all the copper mines. Three banks controlled 50% of all the banks. You know what I'm saying? So but they did these deals. They weren't open bid deals, with investors and whatever. They did deals with their friends. But after NAFTA, they they opened up their markets to, their industries to international, money, and it was boom time. They were booming. Business was booming. Interest rates were low. Unemployment was low. There was a lot of good stuff going on. Now behind the scenes, forgive me for getting a little technical with all this, but behind the scenes there was a little monetary maneuvering going on to keep the peso pegged with the dollar. A lot of corruption in the government. The drug industry exploded. It almost seems like NAFTA was part, like an idea of the cartels. It almost seemed like when you look at the whole picture together. As the corruption in the government, NAFTA, people were actually, as the um, so people were about the corruption. They seen the corruption and they kind of knew that the presidents were still, that the people were stealing from the citizenry or whatever. So we always have this from the citizenry about their politicians and stuff. So voices started getting louder against the government. As the voices, not just from the people, but from because remember, you if you kind of speak up, if you're up in political power, when you speak up, you get taken out, like Cardenas, uh, as the Cuauhtemoc Cardenas aide, he got took out because he was being too loud. So people learn over there to keep quiet. But at this moment in time, people were starting to get more loud and more, verbal about what was going on. And one of those persons was the bishop. Um, I'm sorry, Posadas. As the Bishop Posadas, he was the Archbishop of Guadalajara. He was very vocal about what was going on in the government. He would talk about the cartels and being corrupted with the president and with the people in power and this and that. He was being very vocal about that. You know, um, and this Cardinal Posadas from the Catholic Church he was very like he's big high ranking member of the church, and as that, so he was being very vocal, and you know he got taken out, a priest, a cardinal, an archbishop, you know and the story is well documented, because he was shot, he was assassinated at the Guadalajara International Airport in front of everybody. He was there to pick up a visiting delegate from Rome, um, and as they were pulling up into the parking lot, they were killed. Now, the official story by the government is that they were caught in the crossfire of two rival, cartels. Chapo was there, and the Ariano Felix brothers were there too, and they were shooting at each other, and this guy got caught up in between. That was the official story from the federal government. Like, this is what happened. He must have got caught up in the middle. But reports of witnesses that were there on site. It's an airport. It's in the middle of the day. Traffic coming in and out. People everywhere. As that they said that the whole attack started with and at the Cardinal. There was no crossfire of anything. Witnesses said no. Gunmen got out and attacked that car where the Cardinal was in. He was targeted. He was the target, and whoever was around. There was about seven others killed right around the vicinity from the Cardinal's car, as that were killed also. But it seems like the witnesses were saying that they killed them because they were witnesses. They were eyewitnesses to whoever did this thing. And as soon as the shooting stopped, the gunmen ran off into through the terminals with police everywhere. Now, one of the things about that particular day, the reports were that the entire airport had police presence everywhere. They had federal police, they had military police all over, surrounded the entire airport. Was the police were there? For some strange reason, there was no official. Oh, we're here because we're protecting the 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 guy who's coming from the none of that. But there was a lot of presence of military and federal police and local police there at the airport. So the witnesses saw the shooters get away and were actually helped by the federal police running through the terminal and maybe eventually getting on a plane and going away. the official, remember the official story from the federal government was that he was caught in the crossfire. But but when the it was leaked to the press, his autopsy, he died of 14 shots, and his driver died of like 12 or 15 shots also. So they were targeted. It wasn't crossfire. And of course, this was a huge blow, you know, to Mexico and to the people and to the Catholic Church. And President Salinas, like any good politician, comes and shows his support and says that we're gonna do everything we need to investigate and to figure out who did this and why. And sure enough, they had scapegoats. They had scapegoats planned all along or something, because in 2 or 3 days they declared that El Chapo was responsible. So they made him they made him actually the same day or the next day. They made him the most wanted man in the country. Because the media, the people needed somebody who did this. Okay, it was El Chapo. Damn. The more when you look into the story, that whole, I think they used these cartel members. I'm assuming they used Chapo. He wasn't there. I think they just used his name as a foil to blame. It was Chapo. He was there. The media, they told the media the you know that's the story that goes out to the media, and the media just repeats it. But they arrested El Chapo like 12 days later, trying to flee to Guatemala. But they never charged them with the murder of. They told the media, oh no, he's responsible, and the Arellano brothers are responsible. We're gonna charge them. Nobody ever got charged for the murder of the cardinal, even once they had El Chapo in custody. It's like they just kind of lie. They just kind of lie to the people and expect. So, there's a turbulent time, and here comes a new election. Salinas is about to give up his power and give it to the next guy that he chose, which was Donaldo Colosio, which was a very strong, well educated in America man. He was member of the party, and he had soul, and the people loved him. But his he was listening, actually listening to the people, that they wanted these changes, they wanted these reforms in the government. He was actually listening to the people. But remember, the party picks him. Hey, you're gonna run for our party. And once they picked him, he kind of started going away from what they want. He started saying, "No, yeah, we're gonna relinquish this power of, like he says, we're gonna relinquish this power to where we pick who's next. We're gonna give that power back to you guys." He was telling the people. And then on certain occasions, where he went to certain political rallies and stuff, and he didn't want to, oh, that mayor or that governor that's part of the PRI, that governor that was investigated for corruption. He's like, nah, I don't want to be seen with these people. I don't want them standing on my stage. I want to show integrity to the people, because I'm going to be their president. I don't want to stand next with politicians that are being investigated or crooked. So he started pulling himself away from members of the political party that had power, that were high rank, and he was, I don't want none of that. I don't want none of that. We're gonna do things different now. And the old guard, they don't like people stepping out of line. Hey, we gave you this blessing to become the president. We give it to you. You do what the party says. We're the party. We have the power. We have the money. But Colosio, he was an honorable man, it seemed like, because he said, no, we're not gonna do that anymore. Well, he when you look into Donaldo Colosio story in Mexico, it's like a JFK. Um, he was the popular. He he actually had the support of the people. and the old guard didn't like it. So at a political rally in Tijuana, um, someone came up to him in a crowd. They were walking him through the crowd. Someone came up to him and shot him. That's crazy, hectic situation. They grabbed the guy. They started beating him with rocks, with guns. It's almost like they wanted to kill him on sight. That's the pandemonium. And the same thing happens afterwards with these politicians. They said how much they love Donaldo Colosio. He was part of their party. You know, and they take every advantage to mention his name to try to keep that support from him and transfer it to whoever's next in line. They promised to do investigations into who did it and why. And the official story was a lone gunman theory until the what do you call it was leaked and said he had two bullet shots, one in the head, one on his side, two different calibers. But the official story was one man. Nobody else was involved. No, there was nothing else going on. We're gonna investigate. We're gonna find out who did it. They arrested a few people that let them go later on. Confusion and craziness all. And the political party continues. It continued just doing what they did. Pick the next guy. They won the election. And then the next guy kind of started doing a little things a little bit different, but for the people, not for himself. Well, actually, kind of for himself too, because he's part of this dirty group of people. Was it Cedillo? Cedillo took the place of Colosio and won, and became president. He actually put the president's brother in jail for murder of another political something. They promised, Cedillo promised investigations, and then they put investigations on Salinas, and he has bank accounts with hundreds of millions of dollars. Same with his brother, and the same story over and over and over. And then now, later on, as uh, you know, the charges got dropped against his brother, investigations got dropped against Salinas. Everything's cool. He does interviews like nothing ever happened. He's got money, whatever. Like every just uh, you know. And 30 years later, 35 years later, people are still asking questions about what happened during that election. What happened to Colosio? What happened to the Cardinal? No answers ever come from the government. No answers ever. Investigations, and they have special prosecutors year after year, and then another one, and then another special prosecutor, and then sure enough, we get to find out little by little that these things did happen. Like the ex-president of Mexico, Cedillo, not sorry, Cedillo, um, uh, where is it? De la Madrid. He confessed. He confessed in 2004 in a book. He confessed that the election was manipulated. Uh, Barlet, I'm sorry, earlier I said Massieu, but Barlet was the Secretary of the Interior. He was the one that came out and said, "Oh, the system failed, um, and the numbers and this and that." He was the Secretary of Interior. He's the one, and in 2017 he came out and confessed to the newspaper La Reforma that the figures were manipulated. And check this out: several months after the election, they burned the ballots in big old piles. They burned them to get rid of, you know. In you could see in footage of the tabulating sheets, they actually just switched the numbers. You know, they just added a zero to add an extra, ridiculous stuff. It's all there. It's all there, and it's been documented. There's a New York Times article. I got it pulled up right here. Ex-president in Mexico casts new light on rigged 1988 election. President Miguel de la Madrid governed Mexico for most of the 80s through one of his most painful economic crises. In an autobiography, uh, sheds more light on what happens in that dark night in Mexico history. Let me get to the good part. Wait, here we go. Initial result. Okay, here's the night of the presidency. He says initial results from the areas around the capital showed that Salinas was losing badly to Cuauhtemoc Cárdenas. And he says, I felt like an ice bucket had fell on my head. He said, Mr. De La Madrid recalled, um, I became afraid that the results were similar all across the country and the PRI would lose the presidency. Thus became the frantic staging of a fraudulent victory. He's writing about this in his book. Um, he chose his words very carefully. He says, I was more like a supporting, he described himself more like a supporting actor than a lead strategist. He said if he did anything wrong, it was listening to his staff and for the stability of the nation. So on election night, De La Madrid said that the Secretary of Interior advised him that preliminary results were showing that they were losing badly, and that the public demanded to hear some returns. It was about that time to hear some returns, and that rather than giving the public what they demanded with some results, instead they lied and said that the system had crashed, the voter system had crashed. As midnight approached, De La Madrid learned that the other parties were going to declare victory, so they preempted them and they declared victory. As the Let's see. As the All right, so the ex-president of Mexico, admitted to his involvement in that election. So earlier at the beginning, I asked how would a non-violent coup look? How would it look like? When you have a political party with so much power that's ingrained in every crevice of the government, in every office, in every department, they actually have more power than the person that they put in front. I'm not sure what happened. I mean, people, when you dig into what happened in Mexico, like it's pretty clear, what happened. Um, but historically, when you look at that story and you look at the other stories of attempted coups or short-lived coups, there's a lot of similarities in what in what in, there's a lot of similarities in what's going on. One thing for sure is that it's never what it seems, because what the party was reporting out to the media was not what's actually going on. And that goes for every other example that we have in history of contested elections or coups or attempted coups or whatever. Nothing is ever as it seems. But normally, if you pay attention to what comes afterwards in the years and time afterwards, things kind of start revealing themselves. The truth starts revealing itself. Like now we know that the 1988 election in Mexico was stolen because the president at the time admitted to it. Corruption does not give up power easily. It's going to fight. It's going to do everything it can, and it develops defenses to protect itself from anything or anyone trying to take that power away. All right? All right, all right. I think we're gonna leave it there. All right, yeah, all right, man. That's this story. It's it's pretty amazing. I mean, like You've seen some of it. You probably heard some of it on the Narco series. They talk a little bit about that election. Um, and actually, Netflix has several series out there. This is for you guys who kind of want to dig into something that's a little more on the entertainment side, but with pertinent and valuable information. They have it's called Colosio. You can look it up on Netflix. You can either just put Colosio, but I think the proper title is called Diaries of a Crime. Diarios de un Crimen. Stories, crime stories, or something like that. Diarios de un Crimen, Colosio. You could just type Colosio, Colosio, and you'll find it. And they also have a new that came out not too long ago documentary series called 1994, which goes into the assassination of uh, of the cardinal, and also the crisis, and Colosio. Wait, mostly Colosio. Sorry, I don't think they talk too much about the cardinal. You can look up. There's plenty of. I might put some. There's so much out there. I might put a few links in the description. Just if you want to go, to a couple documentaries on YouTube. Este, um, that just it lays it all out, man. This is pretty amazing story, and like it's very interesting. Like ever since I came across the story in like the Narcos, and in they talked about it, and even in El Chapo's series, they talk about what happened at the airport. They actually did a really that airport episode with the Cardinal. Great, like it's a standalone by itself. It shows like the three different perspectives of what happened that day. Este, there's good stuff out there. History is full of information that can help us figure out what exactly is going on when we see things going on in our own political world, in our own political realm that just sound bananas and crazy. We can say, hold on, let's look back in history. Is there anything similar? That has something like this ever happened before? And as you can see, there's plenty of examples of moments in history where political climates kind of came into a clash, you know. Este, and it's up to us, to know these things and to know them, so we can be aware of when they're happening, and we can help each other, help each other out, to point out to others like this, hey, look what's going on. All right. All right, guys. All right. Well, so I hope you enjoyed our conversation there, and I really hope if you like that story, please look up on Netflix or go to YouTube. You can find all kinds of information about this. It's all everything I read, everything I said was basically, it's all there. It's all true. It's all factual. So I would hope if you enjoyed that story, you would go look up and see some of these things to kind of just fill yourself in with a little more information. All right, guys. I actually like that. It's a lot of work into this one, and I liked it. I really liked the topic. That's them. All right, that's it. All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed what you heard, and if you did, please, please, please tell your friends. If you like this episode, like, hey, even if it's just this episode, tell your friends about this episode. If you heard about this and oh look, homeboys explained it pretty good or whatever, share it. Tell your friends about the show. Don't forget to hit subscribe on the YouTube channel. As we got we got things in the works. It's gonna be pretty awesome. Interview coming up. I am I'm gonna seal the deal shortly. So I'm not gonna say nothing until then. But follow us on Facebook, on YouTube, Spotify, so you won't miss a thing. Um, what else? Anything else important? No, that's it. Folks, in the meantime, I want you to take care of yourself. I want you to stay healthy. I want you to keep educating yourself, keep learning, keep digging, right? Keep searching for the truth in all things. That's all we can do. What else, right? What else are we gonna do? All right. That's it. Stay safe, stay healthy. I will catch you guys next time. Peace out.
This is Thesis.